So, hi everybody. Hopefully you can hear okay. Let us know different. As you know, if you watched the intro and the first module, I'm Barbara Gray from the Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York. And this is my colleague.
I'm John O'Neill from Bloomberg News.
Yeah, and we're really excited about the sort of engagement that we're getting around this basic research skills for everyday reporting. And I've been weighing into the discussion group as the forum, as well as John has, and I don't have anything prepared to review. So I would love to just start the discussion. And ask if anyone has any questions leading in, or if anyone wants to clarify, wants us to clarify anything, or if you've had any successes using any of the techniques that we taught you in part one. So let's get started chatting. You can either put it in the chat or just pipe right up. Nobody be shy. This is a safe environment, and we're happy to have the opportunity to collaborate. Don't often get it. Ooh, we got one. Let's see. Oh, hi. Nice to meet you, Laura. Thank you. Oh, and Carmen Nobel is here. That's fantastic.
That's great.
It is great.
We now have 3 instructors for this session.
Yeah, and I didn't think to invite the speakers. That's a great idea. I'm going to do that for the next module because I'm really excited about that. So let's start talking about, since Carmel is here, Carmen, right? Sorry. Carmen is here. Let's talk about academic sources. I think I mentioned in the video that I hadn't really had the benefit of, understanding the value of academic sources and what they can bring to your work in terms of, first of all of this work that is done in universities is meant to benefit society, right? We can sort of be the bridge to that. And if we can only find the research and find a way to sort of systematically keep that in our rotation of sources. Does anybody have any questions about using academic sources? Has anybody tested out any of the techniques or tools? Please type in. Let us know.
I wanted to bring up one thing that somebody in the forum mentioned a website called ResearchGate.
Yeah.
And which is very, very helpful. I used to do some science writing on the side when I was at the New York Times, and it was a great place to go to find the latest studies on this or that. But the other side to it is these are university PR departments pitching you their latest stories, the latest studies, and there's tremendous value in academic studies, but it's also a business, and we have to approach them with the same sort of skepticism and checking out the agenda, checking out the background of people that there's a lot of science reporting which is very credulous. There's a new study that says this. And the people who wrote it will be happy to tell you that it's really amazing. Not all of them. There are some people who are very ethical and determined to, stand up to the standards of society, of integrity for the enterprise and say, this is one piece in the pile. But so just a sort of context thing for academic discussions is, it's great, but check it out. So Carmen, what's your feeling about like the balance between stuff that's hype and stuff that's hyped by PR departments and stuff that's valuable, or versus the stuff you find on your own that isn't being hyped but might be sort of an outlier? Okay.
Okay, well, we'll wait for Carmen to hop on. But in the meantime, I wanted to welcome
Laura
us.
has her hand up.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. Hi, Laura.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Beck McNichols put in the chat, and I think I would also like to make that question. When you've done enough research, because sometimes you get so excited, you can just go and go and go, and time is running, and you feel you don't have enough. So when you put this line and say, I got what I need.
Oh, man, that's a great question. Well, I get this question all the time from my students and anybody who's even longtime journalists who are just really starting to sort of use their research chops more. And so first time is going to be whatever time you have, right, is going to be, it's going to tell you when you have to stop, right? Because you could always do another story if you have more, or do a follow-up story. But if, there comes a point where you have to stop so that you can, publish your story. But there's also, if there are outstanding questions that you have to continue to work on, then you'll know. But you have to really think about what are the questions that you need answered, like specific questions, just not just discovering the serendipitous stuff. That's my favorite part of research, but what are the specific questions that you want answered? And once you get those answered, you're ready to stop. And another thing, always start writing before you think you need to. So if you do an interview with an expert, write up those high points. And this way you have stuff when you go back a day or two later to just fit into your stories. And that'll also help you see along the way where you have a gap, right? Where you need an answer. But time is really going to tell you, I need to publish this. I need to press play on this. And then maybe this deserves a second day story or a follow-up. I hope that helps, Laura.
Yeah, some of it has to do with what kind of publication you're working for. Carmen is in the waiting room.
Oh, great.
Let's admit her.
Yep.
So what kind of publication, what kind of deadline, and whether something is a running story, because if it's a news event where you can sort of see there's going to be an arc of activity and you can get back to things that you can be looser about. I've answered enough to write this story. I haven't answered enough to write the next story, but I know there's going to be a next story. That's different from when it's I've got one shot to write about this big piece on this company nobody's ever going to hear about again. You don't want to end up like Robert Caro, the famous American journalist turned historian who spent the last 40 years on what was going to be a 5-year project on doing a biography of LBJ. But, you also don't want to give up too soon. I mean, and the technique Barbara mentioned, I remember I used to every time I got in a car after doing an interview, I'd say, what's the lead right now? And then the next one, what's the lead right now? So it's partly because at that point I was working for a PM paper that had very tight deadlines late in the day. And so it's just you always had to be ready to find a payphone and dictate, which I think is a wonderful writing training, is to dictate from notes. That's a situation that just doesn't come up that much anymore. But anyway, so Carmen, welcome.
Welcome.
Are you out there?
Thank you. I'm here. I have a very fuzzy connection, so I keep popping off. So I'm going to leave the camera off. But yeah, this is exciting. Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled.
Well, Barbara, you want to repeat the question that came up before that we tried to ask you?
what's the part about academic research? Just how valuable it was. I didn't realize until I started working at a university how valuable research was, and the purpose of social science research and scientific and medical research is to benefit humanity, and it doesn't always get used. So, I am. I was wondering, like, what you think about that.
Me, Carmen?
Yes.
Sure. I absolutely agree with you. And I think, so the module where I'm speaking, that's next week?
No, it's actually coming up for this week. It just was a little delayed.
Okay, cool. So I am, and forgive me if I'm repeating anything, I'm the program director and editor-in-chief of a website and project at Harvard Kennedy School called the Journalist Resource. And we are all about bridging the gap between journalism and academia by encouraging journalists to use academic research every step of the way along the reporting process, like to turn to academic researchers to get story ideas, and also to inform their news stories with the finding of academic research. And I think there are many reasons that journalists don't do this more often. One is because a lot of these studies are behind paywalls. Another one is because academic researchers aren't usually or often aren't thinking about journalists when they're doing their work. They're thinking about getting published in prestigious academic journals that they can read and help each other like improve the body of research about their topic. But in the meantime, journalists often don't have the time to pour through these academic journals. So we're trying to help them do that. And we do that on our website, and I'll share the link in the chat, by summarizing good academic studies on newsy topics so that journalists can read the summaries if they don't have time to read the whole thing, the whole study. And I can talk more about that. And I'll log in next week on a better connection so I can.
Oh, great.
Okay. So two questions that have come up.
Yeah.
One is a student had mentioned in one of our forums, ResearchGate. It's reminded me of my days doing science for the New York Times and trying to figure out which pieces were sort of just like a university PR department kind of hyping something, and which things are more real. So I'm wondering if you can talk about, one of the benefits of the product of journalist resources, you're curating both in the sense of giving explanations and background to the material, but also making sure you're only presenting really good stuff that matters. What's the process like of wading through everything and coming up with the key things? And then after that, someone raised a question in the chat about how do you fact check academic studies?
Those are both good questions. I will say that I'm kind of overseeing and keeping the trains running, so I'm not the one who's deep into pouring through the research for the most part. But we have a few rules. I think one thing is we will talk to experts in the field about what they think are the best studies and why. But we often start by looking at what are called meta-analyses or systematic reviews, which are basically studies of studies, where an academic researcher will go through hundreds of studies on any given topic and kind of evaluate the studies and look at kind of the broad lay of the land. So we will often include those systematic reviews and meta-analyses in our pieces to help give journalists an overview of the topic itself, and then go from there. And I can go on and on about the different, it depends on the type of studies, but it depends on the topic and on how specific we're getting. But we will often look at, does this study, if it's an experimental study or a survey-based study, how big is the sample that's being studied? So is it a study of 1 million people, or is it a study of 5 people? And all else being equal, the study of 1 million people may be a higher quality study because you're getting a bigger result and a bigger review. Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting lots of questions. So
No, it's a great question.
but yeah, and we actually have, and I can follow up and share with you. We have tip sheets on the journalist resource about all of these things. That help people evaluate what's a good study. And another, I think one thing we often tell people. I'm sorry, one thing there's I think people commonly think that if the study comes from a Harvard University, that means it's a better study than if it comes from, and I say this as somebody who works at Harvard, that they automatically think, well, it comes from Harvard, that means it's a better study than a study that comes from a state school. And that's definitely not the case.
Right.
There's great research everywhere. And I would say for local journalists, especially, their audiences are often interested in the research that's going on in their own backyard. So we encourage local reporters, especially, to look at the universities around you and amplify those voices and amplify that research, because it's often about the research in your area.
You could also search laterally, I would say, which means go to other sites that perhaps talk about the research or cite the research. And you could actually, when you do a Google Scholar search or search on any database, you could see who cited the research. But I think one of the best ways is, because we're not experts in every little, big topic that is being studied scientifically or otherwise, and that you should go to another expert in the topic who is either at your university and look at, and review the kind of stuff that Carmen was talking about, the methodology, the sample size, the error that's allotted, and also, just basically the methodology. And it's always something that's important to review. And I do think we have some readings that we attach, but I'll make sure if we don't, I'll share them.
This is in scientific research. Part of the methodology, one section of every study is supposed to be study limitations, where they're supposed to give an honest account of what the weakness in their methodology was, whether the sample size was small or what they found in their statistical analysis that was, lower than the confidence level. I'm not sure if that applies in some of the social sciences or not, or something like that, but anytime you talk to an expert, you should be asking them, like, what are the limits of this study? What are the weak points here? And if you're being honest at all, they should be willing to tell you about that, because that's part of the academic process.
Absolutely. Let's look at, we have a few other.
Kathy asks, what keywords will we use to yield systematic reviews, or I guess meta reviews? Hi, Carmen. We can see you.
Okay. Yeah, I may fall off in a second.
So what keywords, what keywords would you use to yield systematic reviews? Can you give me a little bit more information, Kathy? Do you mind?
I think if the question is how to find specifically systematic reviews in a search, I think if you use Google Scholar as opposed to a regular Google search, and just search systematic review in quotes along with the topic you're looking for.
Okay.
That will yield the results.
Okay. That sounds great.
Right.
So use maybe systematic reviews in quotes to give you, that would, in turn, give you a larger sample, right?
I think so, yeah.
Or at least, a lot of review of previous studies and literature, perhaps. Okay. I'm going to look at that too. Thank you so much, Kathy. That's great. Okay, systematic reviews. Okay. I'm going to go up a little because we got a good question on the beat memo, and I was hoping that wasn't going to throw anybody. So let's talk to Agnes about this. So Agnes, you want to make sure that you're understanding the beat memo. I see. And in French, that's not necessarily an expression. So you're a science reporter, biodiversity guest. That would be your niche. Yes, niche is another good way to say that. So what happens in journalism school is we teach you beat reporting because it's a really great way to get your mind wrapped around something very quickly, right? So if your beat is a place, like we have community districts in New York City, you'll want to go to Community District 1 in the Bronx and look at Mott Haven, and you'd want to know the demographics and the economics and the the social characteristics, the ethnic and racial characteristics, and just wrap your head around what that is. And you put all that in a memo, and it just, first of all, it reminds you where the sources are, right? So you can see where those sources are. And you can also do that on a topic. So if your beat is, for instance, transportation, you can make sure that you collect all those important resources and people to talk to and organizations to add to your beat memo. So it's sort of like building on a body of knowledge in that memo. Does that help, Agnes?
One other thing we did for a while when I was at the Times, and we had topic pages on the web, and people could build lists of key stories, either Time stories or other stories, and key reports, sort of a navigator of resources, things that you would hit yourself on the head 6 months later because you knew you wanted to use but you couldn't find. And if you can make a part of the memo a list like that, a list of links, that can save you a lot of time later. Another way to think about it is that if you were handing off the beat to somebody else and you wanted to get them off to a running start, what would they need to know? And the things you list in that are going to be the people that are helpful for you to, if nothing else, it reminds you of like, oh, I haven't talked to Charlie for a while, or I haven't talked to, Susan in the mayor's office. So it's one of these things where if you make a habit of it, it's easy to do. Otherwise, it's impossible to do.
Yeah. Let's see. I am looking at Jin's question about tips to navigate academic research from countries with limited freedom of expression. So this is a really great question. I would encourage you to listen to Dr. Nancy Booker's interview. She's a university dean in Kenya, and she had a really great explanation for how her students and how professional journalists in her country do that, and it's collaboration in a lot of ways. But so in terms of search, I don't really know what that looks like from the inside to overcome search. But I think that, collaborating with colleagues from overseas might be a good idea to see if you're looking for a specific type of research, or if you can at least look up the experts, so the academics, to see what their expertise is, and they may be able to share with you that, like the seminal research in that area, if you give them enough lead time. I found that academics are great about that. Peg mentioned, and someone else too, it's best to reach out to the author because it's like the quickest way, and they made this to be useful. And Llama suggested maybe a VPN. I don't know in certain countries if that would fly, but it might be an option. Is that helpful for you, Jin? I'd like to crowdsource that as well. If anyone has any.
One thing you'll hear from David Barboza, a guest speaker in Module 3, is...
Module 3.
Yeah. The Pulitzer he won for his investigation uncovering all the business dealings of the Chinese premier, he said, was entirely through public records. It was not documents getting slipped by some Chinese deep throat, but it takes two things to do that. One is incredible persistence, and the other is it's a documents approach, but it's a documents where you find people who can be your guides to the documents, the people who understand, either someone who understands the filing process and knows what documents are generated, someone, an accountant who can tell you where in a particular kind of filing you can find certain information, or people who understand the sort of political situation enough to sort of point where the bodies are buried. But so even in a country with limited freedom and of expression and limited resource, there's material there. It's not easy to get. You guys have a much harder job to do than we do. But listen to David talk about it. It was inspiring to me, again, because I don't have to do that.
Yeah. Anyone else? That's really great. Yeah, listen to David Barboza, because that's really excellent. You can't fudge public records, even though they may be hard to get. Okay. Vaishnavi, welcome. You asked if they're the best university for masters in journalism, and you're asking me. I work for the City University of New York, the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism. Obviously, I would recommend that you go there. We have an exciting program, extremely diverse group of students in the most exciting city in the world. There are other bigger journalism schools there, and it just depends on what your interests are. So, and where you want to focus. There's a lot of great quality journalism schools, not a lot, but many great quality journalism schools around the country. So we could talk more about that. I'm happy to talk to you more about that. Okay. But go CUNY. Yay. Laura, you raised your hand.
Yes, I wanted to comment on another thing in the chat. Peg McNichols talk about the ethics of using online tools to get around paywalls when newspapers are trying to survive using the paywalls. And she suggests to you contact authors directly. And I wanted to say I do that very often. And it really works. It's very, very rare that an author don't send you the PDF when you ask for it. So you have the time. I think that's a good way to have ethics of not going through the paywalls.
Absolutely. Every solution is like many times the quickest way to solve it is with the phone or an email. So thank you, Peg, and thank you, Laura. And they do want to share it. No one's ever refused. If you go through the public relations office of the university, that might be a problem. But if you go directly to the scholar, that's the thing you do. Just look up their name on the web.
Yeah, and I would add that's allowed. I think some people are afraid to do that because they think they're asking the scholar to break a rule. And more often than not, the scholars are not being paid to be published in these academic journals. So it's different from journalism that way.
Absolutely.
Because of that, they kind of own the rights. But that's a whole other thing. But yeah, more often than not, they are allowed to share that, especially once it's published.
Great.
And JSTOR, which is the largest repository of academic, they know they have an image problem, and they do put out occasional things from beyond the wall, and you can go to them and ask. I don't know what their track record would be, but I would tend to think, in particular, if you're coming from someplace outside of the U.S. where they recognize you would have limited resources, you're not the Washington Post, then they might, make it happen. I don't know. Again, it's a telephone call. Might work, might not. If anybody tries that during the course of these courses, please let us know if it works or not, or maybe I'll try one time. Stephanie asked about initial barriers for journalists in developing countries trying to incorporate academic research into the reports. So in getting across the importance to the public, what kind of challenges, do Globo and Folio, do they make regular use of academic material, or are you thinking of more of TV, or what's your context here? You're muted and your camera is now turned off. So, all right, if you want to come back to us on that, Stephanie, that would be great. Or just email one of us later.
Okay. We have another question from Bruno in Brazil. And he says, we have at least one, if not two, fact-checking agencies. Do you think it should be a part of every media house? The most part of sites and magazines do only the edition without an appropriate fact check. So you're going to really, you hit on this, and this is going to be in our part 4 module, because John got a great guest who is she the managing editor?
Deputy editor.
Deputy editor at Der Spiegel.
Of Der Spiegel.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, facing reality of the journalism economic model now, you have to learn, and she talks about this too, you really have to learn how to have a process to fact check your own work. And that's really what we're going to teach you in module 4. You have to develop your own process to fact check. It's a different brain space than it is writing. Writing, you're trying to convey concepts. And when you're doing fact checking, it's very mechanical, but it has to be that way in order to make sure your brain doesn't skip over the things it already saw that you did and assumes you did right? So you have to learn that process for yourself. Do I think it would be best if we had more fact-checking houses and more fact-checkers and more fact-checking training? Absolutely. I think the reality is that, like exactly what you said, most magazines, they have lead time in their publishing and they have fact-checkers. So, and not everyone else. Everyone else is responsible for their own work for the most part. You have an editor looking over your shoulder, but you're still ultimately responsible.
I mean, we'll hear from Melanie Amon about Spiegel, which does have a very large fact-checking operation, but it's a rarity. The New York Times does not have a separate fact-checking operation. They have researchers people can go to with hard questions, and they have copy editors who are expected to check the facts or a certain number of the facts as they edit, but the writers are expected to be the fact-checkers. Even the New Yorker, which had a very famous fact-checking department, I don't think that exists anymore. Or if it does, it's in it's a shadow of its former self. So
I think the digital side of most magazines still don't get the attention that the print side of published articles gets. And that's even true at the New Yorker. So it's just a dilemma. And we as journalists can really try our best to develop our process to make sure that, it's not so much of a gap, not having them. Any other questions that we can talk about? This is really lively. I'm just loving this. And I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you showing up. Peg, do you mind if I mention your website at all? I'm going to wait until I hear from Peg.
TheOaklandPress.com. She just put in the chat.
She did? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I thought, are you the same Peg that has a personal website with tons of links for great resources for writers? I might have the wrong Peg Nickel, but I think it's you. And it's your personal website. Is that right? I might be wrong, but anyway, I just wanted to say, we got a couple of more good questions. I just want to say how helpful that has been, Peg, as an aspiring writer.
Thank you.
So you are the real Peg McNichol.
As far as I know, I'm the only one in journalism. There's like 5 in the United States. So yeah, and 1 in Canada.
She has aggregated so many great resources for writing and journalism. If you feel good to share that, Peg, please do. I mean, for years I've been tapping into that. Thank you.
Let me give a plug also to a former colleague of both of ours, Margot Williams,
Yes.
has a Substack called Desk Set, which the older among us would remember as a Katharine Hepburn movie. Spencer, Tracy, and Katharine Hepburn, in which she runs a research department, which has a John Henry contest with a computer. But anyway, Desk Set in the Substack, she just takes up a different subject every week and sort of talks about how she's dealt with it, and it's always fascinating.
Yeah, I'll put it in. So we did get another question from Joy, and a couple more questions after that. So Joy wants to know, how do you find those key jargon terms like renal insufficiency quickly? So that's a really great question. It basically for me is I target the academic searches. You know how we do the site:/gov search and the site:/edu search and the site:/org search? Government agencies and academia tend to use discipline words that cross over for the most part. So that's what I'm targeting. So I will use the layperson's terminology that I know. And when I do those 3 searches, I just do, you can't do all of them together, but that's fine because I really want the stuff that I want to come to the top for a site:/org, a site:/gov, and a site:/edu search, which is, not in every country, but it usually is in every country, except it's followed by a dot and then your country's, URL.
It strikes me that this would be an interesting AI experiment. I mean, we'll probably talk some each week about AI and the limits and the fears, but I think asking a chatbot, give me 20 terms that are in common use in this subject, might not be a bad, quick way to get a bunch of keywords. And then you put them in a search and some of them work and some of them don't. But there's no right or wrong there. They'll get you what you want or they won't.
That's right.
So if anybody wants to try that and report back, I would be interested to hear.
Was that helpful, Joy? I hope. Okay. Yeah, great. So let's see what else we had. I saw we had a couple more. Let's see. Reproducing articles on some news portal in your local language. So are you referring to copyright or search? This is for Jagdeep. I'll let you respond when you have a chance. So this is from Clint, a good scholarly search engine that allows people to look into archived newspapers. I love this one. Let's see. Okay, yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so archived newspapers. So let me, there's so many great ones, right? Are we talking international or are we talking the United States archived, historical? Let's say that, historical newspapers. Clint, what do you think? US in your case. Okay, so there's a really great source. It's called, there's several really great US sources. So One of them is called, and many of these are in your local library. So you'll be able to do that, or you could do like a 7-day trial. So I would say the Library of Congress Chronicling America, right? So that's the Library of Congress archive. There's also historical U.S. papers are at, so there's newspapers.com. There's newspaper archives, newspaperarchives.com. There's another source called, America's Historical Newspapers. And then these are all in your local, ProQuest is another one, ProQuest Historical Newspapers. Those, as well as international ones. So those will all be at your local library, not even fooling. And I think the key is to search with historical newspapers. And then you could also add a location. Some good advice here from Samuel. International Newspaper Archives. So let me look. Yeah, anything in particular? Yeah, public librarians, Carmen. Can't say enough. I'm an academic librarian, so I'm biased, but yeah, absolutely. Let me look at some archival ones while we take the next question for Sam. You want to take it over, John?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was responding to somebody.
Okay.
Let's see, we were just talking about a book. What's the... what is the convention for your country in Google search? Meaning, is there a key term or abbreviation to use in Google search? Christina?
Yes. Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Sorry, good afternoon here in Washington. Yes, my question was, I was going through the module and it was interesting to me, the tools and the writing when you're searching for specific things. And I was just wondering what is that? And you put a document there where it states different countries. So if I'm looking for something in specific and I want to find that in that country, is it better to find the abbreviation? Like, for example, Colombia, it can be like CO. Would that improve the search?
Yeah. So it would. You could. The best is searching. If you're in Colombia, you're going to be searching. I mean, Google is going to use your location information and customize stuff to where you are. You could also do it in the language, in Spanish, or you could use words that, so like, I can't remember what the word for sexual assault in, like you couldn't use, I was searching with a group and it was like rape cases in France and how or it might have been Paris, how prosecuted they are. And one of the journalists said, you have to use the term, the best way, it's like jargon, right? Best way is to use the term that's used in the legal papers, right? So if you know there's any kind of jargon or term that's used to find a better, location-oriented source for something that you're looking for, either a report, a public record. Yeah, it's best if you can use the wording that it's described as, even if it's colloquial, right, or something like that. But the best is if you're in that country and you do a search and your searches are generated. You can even change country searches in Google if you go to your settings. But is that helpful at all?
Does that actually fool Google and does it give you the same results if you were sitting in Brazil, or is it if you?
Sorry, that was my following up question. I'm in the US, but most of the work that I do, it's from countries outside of the US. So sometimes it's difficult to find like cases specifically. So I was wondering if there's something that you can do that can help that.
So let
And
me
you're based here in the US, yes.
Oh, so you're based in the US, but your information you're seeking is in many other countries, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, yes, you could try several things. So you could either try anonymizing your search. You could try searching, like changing your country of origin in your Google settings. But I think the best thing is to try and cultivate sources in that country so that you're sort of teaching the algorithm. I mean, I've taught my algorithm over 25 years, right, since Google's been alive. So you could do your best to do that, or you could try looking in specifically Colombia, right? So it would be .gov.co, right? Is that Colombia's, root for their URL? Yeah. So you could do that. You can try the site.gov.co, right? So I would force those searches on Google and then do the same with edu and the same with org, right? So I would pump those over and over again as a regular, like a course of business, regular course of searching. And then I would also make sure that I have a base of sources that I could search. Google used to allow you to make your own personal customized search engine, and you can feed those sources in there. They don't do it anymore, but it would be helpful. But I think a good start would be for you to do that. And then also make sure that you're in their news sources, right? So, when you search, make sure you're searching within. You could do a Google, if they're paywalled, it's harder, but you could do one of those Google searches it's called an X-ray search. Let me just show you. I'm going to type one in chat for you now, but it would be, reports, it could be, can you give me an example to search, Christina, for a topic?
I cover press freedom, so anything related to press freedom, we can do that.
Very good, and thank you for your service. Okay, so we could do press freedom experiment. Experiment with multiple searches, but then do site colon and then the URL of a public. Of a publication. So it would be like NY Times, but it would be a Colombian paper. It would be a Peruvian paper. So make sure you're doing those. And you could actually bookmark them and just change or add a term. Like you could add a new term. So you keep your press freedom and then add somebody's name, right? And you could just bookmark these, right? There's a thing that I use called One Tab. It's called One Tab. You can keep all of these searches in one tab and then just go through all of them like as a weekly course of business to see what's new and make sure you're searching each one of those, but you're sort of, I'll give you the One Tab extension. And it just pulls all these websites, these searches into one tab for you. Let's see, One Tab Google, Google extension. Or add-on, what is it called? Extension. Here we go. And I find this really great. So it just puts it so you don't have to open 45, tabs on your, sorry. Gotta get this in here. I hope that helps, Christina. But if there's anything more, type it in the forum. And
thank you.
Yeah.
This is very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go back to looking for some world newspaper archives because I found a couple and I just want to make them available. Okay, let's see this. So talk amongst yourselves. Just kidding.
I just did a little experiment where I went on to Bing and I asked this, Microsoft Copilot, and said, give me 5 sources about Jair Bolsonaro, and it did. And I said, then give me 5 sources you would give me if I were logged on in Brazil, and it gave me 5 different sources. None of them are like super great or surprising. It's like Globo, Portuguese Wikipedia instead of English Wikipedia. But, as that tool develops, maybe that's one way around. Use one tool produced by the company to fight their own algorithm.
Okay, so we are almost at our last question because we're almost at our hour, and we got jobs, we all got jobs. So we can pick this up. I'm so grateful. But is there any quick question that we can end off with? Let's see. I'm just looking through. And please hop in if you have one. Thanks, Lynn. That's great. Lynn says you can also hit the local Google site to get you the UK, the local search engine. Condé Nast has it. Maria was telling us about fact-checking departments. Condé Nast has a humongous, overarching fact-checking department separate from the New Yorker, but it's pretty, and they call it the News Integrity Unit, which I love that because that's really like the integrity of your reporting. Yeah.
Peg asks, will these notes be in a chat? Camila said something we can do.
We'll make sure to share them in the chat or in the forum.
Terrific. Yeah, if we missed anything, we'll pick it up next week too. Just remind us. You guys are a fantastic community.
Yeah.
I can't believe I haven't tapped into this yet. I can't thank you enough. Thanks for showing up and showing out.
Okay. Well, we look forward to seeing more good talk in the forums and then here next week.
Yeah.
So
And
are we doing 2 forums a week or just 1?
I'm not sure. 2 forums, 2 discussion forums. Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
All right.
Maybe, I'm not sure, but we'll figure it out.
I'll figure it out.
Thanks again, guys.
Thanks, everybody.